My fiancé parents called me into their mansion and offered me $200,000 in cash to break up with their son and disappear from his life forever. They made me sign a contract promising I would never tell anyone about the bribe. So I took their money, signed their paper, and then 3 weeks later, I walked into their exclusive charity gala and told everyone exactly what they had done. My name is Emma, and I am 30 years old. Until 3 months ago, I was engaged to a man named Alexander Whitmore. Everyone called him Alex. We had been together for 2 years and engaged for 6 months. I loved him completely, and I thought he loved me too. Alex came from money, serious money. His family owned a real estate development company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They had homes in 3 different states. They traveled in private jets. They moved in circles where everyone knew everyone, and wealth was just assumed. I did not come from that world. I grew up middle class in a small town in Ohio. My dad was a high school teacher, my mom was a nurse. We were comfortable, but we were not wealthy. I worked my way through college with scholarships and student loans. I got a job as a marketing coordinator at a tech startup, making decent money, but nothing compared to what the Whitmore family considered pocket change. I met Alex at a conference in Chicago. He was there representing his family company. I was there for my job. We ended up sitting next to each other at a panel discussion and started talking. He was charming, funny, and genuinely interested in what I had to say. We exchanged numbers and stayed in touch. 3 months later, he asked me to visit him in Boston where he lived. I went. We spent an amazing weekend together. After that, we were inseparable. He would fly to Seattle where I lived, or I would fly to Boston. We would meet in random cities for long weekends. It was exciting and romantic and everything I had ever wanted. 6 months into our relationship, Alex told me he loved me. A year in, he asked me to move to Boston. I said yes. I quit my job, packed up my life, and moved across the country to be with him. That is when I met his parents. Richard and Catherine Whitmore were exactly what you would expect from old money. Polished, elegant, cold. They lived in a mansion in Beacon Hill. Everything about them screamed wealth and status. The art on their walls, the cars in their garage, the way they spoke in that particular accent that rich people have. The first time I met them was at a family dinner. Alex had warned me they could be a bit formal, but he assured me they would love me once they got to know me. He was wrong. From the moment I walked into their house, Catherine looked at me like I was something unpleasant she had found on the bottom of her shoe. She was polite, but cold. She asked questions about my family, my education, my career, in a way that felt more like an interrogation than conversation. Where did you say your father worked? A high school teacher. How quaint. And your mother is a nurse? How nice that you come from a service-oriented family. What university did you attend? I see, a state school. How practical. Every comment was designed to remind me that I was not one of them, that I did not belong in their world. Richard was less obvious about it, but he was no better. He barely spoke to me during dinner. When he did, it was to ask questions about my job, and then nod dismissively when I answered, like nothing I said was worth his time. After dinner, Catherine pulled Alex aside. I could not hear what they were saying, but I could see her face. She was not happy. On the drive home, I asked Alex what his mother had said. He brushed it off. She just needs time to get used to the idea of us. She will come around. But she did not come around. Over the next year and a half, every interaction with Catherine and Richard was the same. Polite on the surface, but with an undercurrent of disapproval that was impossible to miss. They never invited me to family events without Alex explicitly insisting I be included. They never asked about my life or my interests unless Alex was there to notice. They made it clear in 1,000 small ways that I was not welcome in their family. But Alex loved me and I loved him. So I tried to ignore it. I told myself it did not matter what his parents thought. We were building our own life together. Then Alex proposed. It was perfect. He took me to the beach at sunset, got down on one knee, and asked me to marry him. I said yes immediately. I was so happy I cried. We called his parents that night to tell them the news. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Catherine said in her icy voice, "How wonderful, and that we should come to dinner that weekend to celebrate." The celebration dinner was anything but celebratory. Catherine and Richard were polite but distant. They asked about our wedding plans in a way that made it clear they were not excited. When I mentioned wanting a simple ceremony, Catherine said something about how the Whitmore name required a certain level of formality and expectation. After dinner, Richard asked to speak with Alex privately in his study. They were in there for over an hour. When Alex came out, he looked upset. He did not want to talk about it. He just said his father had some concerns about the timeline and that we would figure it out. 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from Catherine. She asked if I could come to the house the next day, alone. She said she wanted to discuss some wedding planning details and thought it would be easier without Alex there to complicate things. I should have known something was wrong, but I wanted so badly to believe that she was finally accepting me that I agreed. I arrived at the Whitmore mansion the next afternoon. The housekeeper let me in and directed me to the sitting room. Catherine and Richard were both there waiting for me. That was my first clue that this was not about wedding planning. "Emma, thank you for coming," Catherine said. She gestured to a chair. "Please, sit down." I sat. Richard remained standing by the fireplace. Catherine sat across from me in a wingback chair, looking like a queen on a throne. "We asked you here today because we need to have a difficult conversation," Catherine began, "about your relationship with our son." "Okay," I said slowly. "What about it?" "We do not think you are a suitable match for Alexander," Richard said bluntly. "You come from a different background, a different social class. You do not understand our world, and you never will." I felt like I had been slapped. I knew they did not approve of me, but hearing it said so directly was shocking. "We have nothing against you personally," Catherine continued. "I am sure you are a lovely person, but you are not right for our family. Alexander needs to marry someone who understands the responsibilities that come with the Whitmore name, someone who can navigate our social circles, someone from our world." "Alex loves me," I said, finding my voice. "We are engaged. We are building a life together." "Alexander is young," Richard said. "He thinks he knows what he wants, but he does not understand the long-term implications of this match. In 5 years, 10 years, he will realize his mistake, but by then it will be too late. You will be divorced and he will have damaged his reputation and his prospects." "So you want me to break up with him?" I said. "We want you to make the right decision," Catherine said, "for everyone involved, including yourself. You must see that this marriage will never work. You will never truly be accepted in our world. You will always be the outsider. Is that really the life you want?" "What I want is to marry the man I love," I said. Catherine and Richard exchanged a look. Then Richard walked over to a desk in the corner and picked up a folder. He brought it over and set it on the table in front of me. "We are prepared to make this easier for you," he said, "to help you start over, build a new life." I opened the folder. Inside was a check, made out to me, for $200,000. I stared at it. They were trying to buy me off. "We are also prepared to cover your student loans," Catherine said, "and provide a reference for any job you might pursue. We have connections in many industries. We can help you build a successful career far away from here." "Far away," I repeated. "We think it would be best if you left Boston," Richard said. "Perhaps move back to the West Coast. Somewhere you would not accidentally run into Alexander." "This is insane," I said. "You are trying to pay me to leave your son." "We are trying to offer you a fresh start," Catherine said. "You are a young woman with your whole life ahead of you. $200,000 is nothing to us, but it could change your life. You could pay off your debts, put a down payment on a home, start over somewhere new with no ties to this situation." And in exchange, I said? In exchange, you break off the engagement, Richard said. You tell Alexander that you have realized the relationship is not working, that you want different things, that you have decided to move on. And you never tell him or anyone else about this conversation or this offer. He slid another document across the table, a non-disclosure agreement, pages and pages of legal language that basically said if I took their money, I could never tell anyone why I had really left Alex. You want me to lie to him, I said, to break his heart and then never explain why? We want you to make a clean break, Catherine said, for his sake and yours. He will be hurt at first, but he will move on. He will meet someone appropriate, someone from his own world. And he will thank us eventually for helping him avoid a terrible mistake. I looked at the check again. $200,000. More money than I had ever seen in my life. Enough to completely change my financial situation. And all I had to do was walk away from the man I loved and lie about why. I need time to think about this, I said. Of course, Catherine said. Take a few days, but not too long. We would like this resolved before the engagement goes any further. I left the mansion in a daze. I drove back to the apartment I shared with Alex and sat in my car for an hour, trying to process what had just happened. His parents had literally tried to buy me off. They thought I was so beneath their family that $200,000 was a fair price to make me disappear. Part of me wanted to march back into that house and throw the check in their faces, to tell them exactly what I thought of them and their money and their elitist attitude. But another part of me was tempted. Not because I wanted to leave Alex, but because I was angry, furious. These people had treated me like garbage for almost 2 years. They had made me feel small and worthless. And now they were so confident in their superiority that they thought they could just pay me to go away. I wanted to make them pay. That night, I barely slept. I thought about Alex, about his parents, about what they had offered me. By morning, I had made a decision. I was going to take their money. And then I was going to make them regret ever underestimating me. I called Catherine the next day. I told her I had thought about their offer and I was willing to accept it. Under certain conditions, she sounded pleased. Of course. What conditions? I want the full amount up front, I said, not a check, a wire transfer to my account. I want proof that the money is really mine before I do anything. That can be arranged, Catherine said. Anything else? I want 2 weeks, I said. I need time to find a new apartment in another city and get my affairs in order. I cannot just disappear overnight. It will look suspicious. 2 weeks is acceptable, Catherine agreed. But you must sign the NDA before we transfer the money. Fine, I said. Send it over. The next day, a lawyer showed up at my door with the NDA. I read through it carefully. It was as bad as I expected. I could never tell Alex or anyone else about the bribe. If I did, I would have to pay back the money plus penalties. I would be sued for breach of contract. My life would be destroyed. I signed it. The lawyer witnessed my signature and left. 2 days later, $200,000 appeared in my bank account. I stared at the balance on my phone. It was real. They had actually paid me. Catherine and Richard Whitmore had given me $200,000 to break up with their son. The same day the money cleared, I called Alex. I told him I needed to talk to him about something important. He came home from work early, looking concerned. We need to break up, I said. He looked like I had hit him. What? Why? Emma, what is going on? I just do not think this is working anymore, I said. I have been thinking about it for a while, and I do not see a future for us. That is not true, he said. We are engaged. We are planning a wedding. Where is this coming from? I am sorry, I said. I just cannot do this anymore. Did my parents say something to you? He asked. Emma, if they said something to you, please tell me. I will handle them. This has nothing to do with your parents, I lied. This is about me. about what I want, and I do not want this anymore. We argued for over an hour. He begged me to reconsider, to tell him what had really changed, to give him a chance to fix whatever was wrong. But I stuck to my story. I was done. I was moving back to Seattle. I did not want to be with him anymore. He left that night completely devastated. I felt terrible. I loved Alex. Breaking his heart was one of the hardest things I had ever done. But I reminded myself that this was not really about him. This was about his parents, about making them pay for thinking they could buy and sell people like objects. Over the next 2 weeks, I did exactly what I had told Catherine I would do. I packed up my things. I found a new apartment in Seattle. I made arrangements to move. But I also did something else. I made copies of everything. The check, the NDA, the emails between me and Catherine. I recorded a video of myself explaining what had happened, why I had really left Alex, what his parents had done. And I started researching. I looked into the Whitmore family business, their social connections, their reputation. I learned that they were major donors to several charities in Boston, that they hosted an annual charity gala every year that was one of the biggest social events of the season. The gala was 3 weeks away. I bought a ticket. It was expensive, $500. But I had $200,000 now, so I could afford it. I also bought a dress, something elegant and expensive, something that would let me blend in with their crowd. And I made a plan. The night of the gala, I flew back to Boston. I got my hair and makeup done professionally. I put on my dress and my heels, and I looked like I belonged in their world. The gala was held at a historic hotel in downtown Boston. The ballroom was filled with wealthy people in tuxedos and evening gowns. There was a string quartet playing, champagne flowing, everything you'd expect from a high society fundraiser. Catherine and Richard were there, of course. They were the hosts. They stood near the entrance greeting guests with their practiced smiles and polished manners. I waited until the program started. There were speeches from various board members thanking donors and talking about the charity work. Catherine was scheduled to give the closing remarks. When it was her turn, she walked up to the podium. She thanked everyone for coming. She talked about the importance of giving back and supporting the community. She smiled her cold, practiced smile. And then I stood up. I walked down the center aisle toward the podium. People turned to look at me. Catherine saw me coming and her smile faltered. She recognized me immediately. "Excuse me," I said loudly. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have something I need to say." Security started moving toward me, but I was faster. I reached the podium before they could stop me. "My name is Emma Richardson," I said, speaking into the microphone. 3 weeks ago, Catherine and Richard Whitmore offered me $200,000 to break up with their son and disappear from his life. The room went completely silent. Catherine tried to grab the microphone from me, but I held it away from her. "They told me I was not good enough for their family," I continued. "That I came from the wrong background, the wrong social class. They made me sign a non-disclosure agreement promising I would never tell anyone about the bribe. And I took their money. I signed their paper, and I left." People were pulling out their phones, recording, photographing. This was going to be all over social media within minutes. "But here's what the Whitmore family did not count on," I said. "They thought they could buy my silence. They thought $200,000 was enough to make me disappear quietly. But what they did not realize is that some things are worth more than money, like dignity, like self-respect, like making sure people know exactly what kind of people you really are." Catherine's face was white. Richard was pushing through the crowd trying to get to me, but security was blocking his way in the chaos. I have copies of everything I said: the check, the NDA, the emails, the recordings of our conversations, and I am making all of it public. Not because I want revenge, but because people like you need to understand that you cannot just buy and sell people, that money does not make you better than anyone else, and that sometimes when you try to crush someone, you underestimate their ability to fight back. Security finally reached me. They pulled me away from the podium, but the damage was done. Everyone had heard. Everyone had seen. The Whitmore family reputation was in ruins. They escorted me out of the building, but as I left, I saw the faces of everyone in that room. Shocked, disgusted. The same people who had respected and admired Catherine and Richard were now looking at them like they were monsters. The story exploded overnight. It was on social media, in the news. Everyone was talking about the wealthy couple who had tried to bribe their son Fiancé to leave him. The Whitmore family became a symbol of everything wrong with the wealthy elite, their arrogance, their entitlement, their belief that money could solve everything. Alex called me the next day. I answered. "Is it true?" he asked. "Did my parents really pay you to leave me?" "Yes," I said. "I am sorry I did not tell you before. They made me sign an NDA, but I could not let them get away with it." He was quiet for a long time. "I cannot believe they did that. I knew they did not approve of you, but I never thought they would go that far." "I am sorry," I said. "I know this must be devastating for you." "It is," he said, "but I am more angry at them than at you. You did what you had to do. I understand that." We talked for over an hour. He told me he had confronted his parents, that they had admitted everything, that they had tried to justify it by saying they were protecting him. He told them he was done, that he was cutting ties with them, that he wanted nothing to do with people who thought they could control his life like that. He asked if we could try again, if I would consider coming back. I told him no, not because I did not love him, but because too much had happened, too much damage had been done. His parents would always be part of his life, whether he cut ties with them now or not. And I did not want to spend my life fighting that battle. He understood. We said goodbye for the last time. The Whitmore family tried to sue me for breach of contract, but their lawyers realized quickly that the case would only bring more attention to what they had done. They dropped the lawsuit and issued a public apology instead. A carefully worded statement about how they had made a mistake in judgment and deeply regretted their actions. But the damage to their reputation was permanent. Several charities cut ties with them. Business partners distanced themselves. They were no longer welcome in the social circles they had once dominated. As for me, I kept the $200,000. I used it to pay off my student loans, put a down payment on a condo in Seattle, and invest the rest. I also donated $50,000 to a charity that helps young women from low-income backgrounds get access to education and career opportunities. It has been 3 months since the gala. My life has returned to normal for the most part. I have a new job, new friends, a fresh start in a city where no one knows my story unless I choose to tell them. But I learned something important from all of this. I learned that standing up for yourself is worth more than any amount of money. That people who think they can buy and control others will always underestimate those they consider beneath them. And that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to stay silent. My name is Emma. I am 30 years old. My fiancé parents tried to buy my silence and paid me $200,000 to disappear. I took their money, and then I crashed their charity gala and told everyone exactly what they had done. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Because some things are more important than keeping the peace. Some things are more important than protecting rich people from the consequences of their own actions. Catherine and Richard Whitmore thought they could make me disappear for $200,000. What they did not count on was that I would take their money and use it to make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of people they were. And that is worth more than all the money in the world.